Class 6 Geometry Chapter 25 Parallel Lines. Children, in this video you will learn about the parallel lines and the transversal lines. What are parallel lines? Two straight lines which are lying on the same plane are said to be parallel if they do not meet, no matter how much they are extended in either direction. Here in this figure you can see that there are two straight lines, PQ and RS. PQ is a straight line, RS is also a straight line, and they are lying on the same plane. But what is the speciality of these two lines? Now these two lines are placed in such a way that if you extend them in both the directions, these two lines will never meet. So we call this line PQ and line RS parallel lines. So in this figure you have got PQ and RS, two straight lines which are parallel to each other. The concept of transversal. Here in this figure you can see that you have got three lines, line L1, line L2 and line L. Now line L1 and L2, they are not parallel to each other, but they are simple straight lines. But this line L, it is cutting off line L1 at one point and line L2 in another point. So we will call this line L as a transversal. Now when this transversal is cutting off line L1 and L2, certain angles are formed. So when line L is cutting off line L1, there are four angles which are formed over here. And when this line L is extended further and it is cutting off line L2, we are getting more four angles. Now there are some relationships between these angles which you see over here. But let us learn a little bit more. So when L is cutting off line L1, you get four angles over here. That is angle 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now amongst these angles, 2 and 4 are vertically opposite and 1 and 3 are vertically opposite. Similarly, when line L is cutting off L2, you are getting another 4 angles over here. That is 5, 6, 7 and 8. Now amongst these 4 angles, angle 6 and 8 are vertically opposite and 5 and 7 are vertically opposite. But let us study about some new names of the angles. Now look at the figure very carefully. You will understand that there are some angles which are formed on the uppermost part of this line L1 and on the bottom part of line L2. That is angle 1, angle 2, angle 7 and angle 8. They are forming outside the figure. So we will call them as exterior angles. So angle 1, 2, 7 and 8 are exterior angles. Then what do we call these four angles which are formed inside the figure? That is 3, 4, 5 and 6. All these four angles, since they are formed inside the figure, they are known as interior angles. Take angles 2 and 8. If you see it, angle 2 and angle 8, they are exterior angles. But they are forming on the opposite sides of this transversal L. Angle 2 is formed on the right side, whereas angle 8 is formed on the left side of this line L. So angle 2 and 8, they are exterior alternate angles, whereas angle 1 and 7, they are also known as exterior alternate angles, since angle 1 and 7 are also formed on the opposite sides of the transversal L. So you get two pairs of exterior alternate angles, angle 2 and 8 and angles 1 and 7. They are exterior alternate angles since they are formed on the opposite sides of the transversal, and they are exterior angles. Now consider these angles 4 and 6 and 3 and 5. Now they are all interior angles, but angle 3 and angle 5, they are forming on the opposite sides of the transversal, whereas angle 4 and angle 6 is also forming on the opposite sides of the transversal. So we will call these two pairs, that is angle 3 and 5 and angles 4 and 6, as interior alternate angles. Since all these four angles are interior, but 3 and 5 are alternate to each other and 4 and 6 are alternate to each other. Now consider these angles 1 and 5, 2 and 6, 4 and 8 and 3 and 7. So we call these angles 1 and 5 as corresponding angles, 2 and 6 as corresponding angles, 4 and 8 as corresponding angles, and 3 and 7 as corresponding angles. Now here what you see is one angle, one exterior angle and one interior angles, which are placed in such a way that they are forming on the same side of the transversal. So we call them as the corresponding angles. So in this figure, you have got four pairs of corresponding angles. Angles 1 and 5, angles 4 and 8, angles 2 and 6, and angles 3 and 7. So there are four pairs of corresponding angles. Now you know that 3, 4, 5 and 6, they are interior angles. But let us consider the angles separately. Angle 3 and 6 are forming on one side of the transversal, and angle 4 and 5 are forming on the other side of the transversal. So angle 3 and 3 and 6 are called as co-interior angles, whereas angles 4 and 5 are also called the co-interior angles. So there are two pairs of co-interior angles, angles 3 and 6 and angles 4 and 5. They are co-interior angles. Now angles 2 and 7, they are exterior angles and are forming on the same side of the transversal. So they are known as exterior allied angles. Whereas angles 1 and 8, they are also forming on the same side of the transversal. So they are also known as exterior allied angles. So here you get two pairs of exterior allied angles, angles 2 and 7 and angles 1 and 8. Now, if instead of two normal lines, we have got a pair of parallel lines, and these parallel lines are cut off by a transversal, then the same case you will get these many angles as you have seen in the previous figure. But here certain angles will be equal to each other. See the first part. Here we will understand about the alternate exterior angles. Since these two are parallel lines and this is a transversal, you see angles 1, 2, 7 and 8. They are the exterior angles. Now, if they are exterior angles, angle 1 and 8, they are exterior alternate angles and these two angles are equal. Similarly, angle 2 and 7 are also exterior alternate angles and their values will also be the same. So we have got two pairs of exterior alternate angles, angle 1 equal to angle 8 and angle 2 equal to angle 7. That is, these angles are equal to each other. 1 will be equal to 8 and 2 will be equal to 7. Next, alternate interior angles. Now see the interior angles which are formed inside these two parallel lines. So you get angles 3, 4, 5 and 6. So you can understand from this that angle 4 and 5 are alternate angles and angle 3 and 6 are alternate angles and they are interior angles also. So, angle 4 and 5 will be equal to each other, whereas angle 3 and 6 will be equal to each other. Because angle 4 and 5 are interior alternate angles, as well as angle 3 and 6 are also interior alternate angles. So these pairs of angles will be equal. That is angle 3 equal to angle 6 and angle 4 equal to angle 5. Now let us learn about the corresponding angles. Now there are 4 pairs of corresponding angles which are formed. 1 and 5 are corresponding to each other. 2 and 6 are corresponding to each other. 3 and 7 are corresponding to each other, and 4 and 8 are corresponding to each other. So, when two parallel lines are intersected by a transversal line, then we get 4 pairs of corresponding angles, and these corresponding angles are equal to each other. That is, angle 1 will be equal to angle 5, angle 2 will be equal to angle 6, angle 3 will be equal to angle 7, and angle 4 will be equal to angle 8. So, all the 4 pairs of corresponding angles will be equal to each other. Now, there are 4 interior angles which are formed over here. That is angle 3, 4, 5 and 6. If we take the consecutive interior angles or the co-interior angles, that is angle 4 and 6. So 4 and 6 are co-interior angles, whereas 3 and 5 are also co-interior angles. But angle 4 will not be equal to angle 6. But when you sum angle 4 and angle 6 together, you will get 180 degree. So the sum of angle 4 and angle 6 is equal to 180. Similarly, the sum of angle 3 and angle 5 is also equal to 180 degree. So, the sum of the co-interior angles are 180 degree. That is, angle 3 and 5 when summed up together will give you 180 degree, and co-interior angles 4 and 6 when summed up together will give you the value of 180 degree. So children, you have learned about the different types of angles which are formed by two lines and their transversal line. So whether the lines are parallel or not, there are 4 pairs of angles which are formed over there. So understand this very carefully so that you are able to do the sums of exercise 25B.